I bought the cheapest track saw in the world, or at least on Amazon. This is the Win track saw. It's about $102.78. That's what I paid for it recently. And I planned on doing a proper versus video between my beloved Makita track saw and this $100 track saw. But all my plans came to a screeching halt when out of the box I encountered a problem with this. And after a day of messing with it, I'm not even going to plug this saw in. I'm not even gonna try it. I'm gonna send this sucker back. In this video, what I wanna share with you is what I learned about this and why I'm sending it back and not even going to turn it on, and why you may feel different, because a lot of this is subjective. Let's talk price and what you get. This was $102.78 at the time that I'm recording it. I've seen it a little bit more. I've heard other people review and they've paid more. I got, for 100 bucks, you just get the saw. You don't get a sustainer, you don't get a track, you get a saw and an inconveniently placed Allen wrench. And there's like barely any packing in this box. With this Makita, now this is where things get different because they have all these kits, but I'm just gonna go saw only, is about $379 currently. I got my kit 2 years ago on a Black Friday deal where Amazon and Makita were doing a special, and I got my saw and a track for like $330. It was crazy. I've never seen it that cheap. But just because this doesn't come with a track, saw to saw, $100, $380. So this is about $280 more. So the question is it worth it? Now let's talk tracks real quick. If you get the track kit, which for this is about $429, you get the sustainer, this corded version of the saw, which is kind of what I'm talking about, and a 55-inch track. And I think that's a pretty good deal. If you want to get a track with the Win, I think currently you have to get a separate item, and it's about 65 bucks. But the Win tracks seem sketchy based on reviews, and they're shorter. They're 50 inches, where the Makita and Festool and Powertec and basically I think every other track is about 55 inches. So the problem runs is if you're going to run with this saw, and I know a lot of people love it, don't use the Win tracks, use the Powertec, because you'll get 110 inches and you'll be able to cut a sheet of plywood, where if you run with the Win tracks, you'll be down to 100 inches and you're not gonna have a lot of overhang if you're doing a full cut. So now I have had my hands on this Makita for over 2 years and I use it a lot and I love it. I'm also a Makita fanboy, so this is definitely biased because I am 100% Team Makita, but this saw is just good. I mean, it feels nice. It has nice rubber. Parts of it are plastic, parts of it are metal, but there's a lot of just little bitty features that make using this saw effortless and I think safer. With the Win, this is metal, which I was kind of surprised. I was expecting this to be plastic, and the base is a metal, but everything else on here is plastic, and the fit and finishing of it feels a little Fisher Price, where there's plastic on this saw, but it feels more refined. This feels clunky, like all the plastic parts just feel clunky. There's a couple of things that bothered me about this saw. The first is weird. You might laugh at this, but on the Makita, they include the hex wrench so you can change your blade in this recess on the handle. But on the Win, they didn't do that. Is there a patent? I don't know. They included it on the back of the cord here, which seems like an odd place to put a wrench. It's gonna get dirty, it's gonna fall out. I don't know why they couldn't just place it right here. Like, I don't know if other people do it, but Makita does it. The other thing that bothered me is the plunge depth ruler, whatever you call it. On Makita, they have a black and white contrast and it's easy to see, but it's in metric. On the Win, they have it in imperial. They have inches, which I was like, wow, that's amazing, but it's black on black and it's really hard to see. I'm currently 38. I'm getting older, I'm young, but I can barely see the depth on this thing. I like that the saw has an anti-kickback feature where you can lock the saw into the track, and I like that you have adjustment knobs where you can really dial in your fit. The Makita motor, you can change the speed on, but on the Win, there's no changing the speed. But the reason why I'm sending this back, and the reason why I'm not even turning it on, is this plunge button. At first, I couldn't even plunge the saw, and I had to use 2 fingers. I had to put a lot of force just to get it to move. And even then, listen, you hear that? There's like a pin stuck in this thing, and as it plunges, it is scraping the inside. And if I press super hard with 2 hands, I can get it to not do that. But if I press just with 1 hand really hard, it's still doing that. Where on the Makita, it depresses really easy. I think there's a chance that there's a problem with this unit. It does not appear to be a return item. I didn't see any sawdust on here, and so that's kind of why I don't want to use it. And then I know I'm going to return it, and I probably could make it dirty and send it back, but I think there's a chance there's something wrong with this unit. I know there's a lot of people who give good ratings to these, and I know there's several creators out there who've done videos where they like it. And so I'm not, I wouldn't say the saw is useless. I would just say, as a guy who's used this Makita for 2 years and has been comfortable with an experience with, let's call it a $400 track saw, jumping to a $100 track saw definitely felt like jumping to a $100 track saw. But all that said, now I haven't used it, but would it clip into a track, run a straight line, and cut a piece of wood? Yeah, it totally, I guess it would. I mean, I haven't plugged it in, but really, this is where you get into the subjective area on should you do this. So I kind of came up in my mind kind of like a scale of who would say, no, this is not for me, and who would. And so we've all been in a big box store, Home Depot, Lowe's, and we'll just say, let's call them in the middle because they're kind of middle of the road, budget friendly. And in those stores you can find, it kind of depends on what's happening in the factories, but you can find decent brands like Makita, DeWalt, Milwaukee. You go down a little bit, you'd find the house brands like Rigid and Cobalt, and you go down from that, and then you'd find, like Ryobi, okay? And so that's generally going into a big box store here in the States, the brands you're gonna get. You can go into Home Depot, you can spend money on a cheap Ryobi, or you can spend money on a Bosch or Milwaukee or Makita, or in between in a DeWalt. You can do that. So if you're in a big box store and you reach towards Woodcrafted Rockler, you're gonna find Festool, you're gonna find, you'll find Bosch and Makita in those places I've been in a Rockler where they had this Makita saw next to a Festool, right? You're not gonna find Festool at a Home Depot or a Lowe's, okay? So, and if you're walking into a Rockler or you're walking into a Woodcraft, chances are you're not making out of the store less than $100 anyway, okay? So if you're somebody who, when you're in Home Depot or Lowe's and you wished you were at Rockler or Woodcraft, you would not be happy. I don't think you would be happy with the saw, because you would be wanting something like this or even a Festool, okay? But if you're in Home Depot and Lowe's and you don't even know about Rockler or Woodcraft, or you've walked in and you were scared at the prices, which has happened to me, and you tend to lean towards Harbor Freight and brands like Pittsburgh or Chicago Electric or Drillmaster, or even now like Bauer and Hercules and all these other brands, then I think you would be happy with the saw. This actually feels like a Harbor Freight saw. I'm kind of surprised Harbor Freight doesn't have a track saw. I'm surprised Ryobi doesn't have a track saw. But if I saw this at Harbor Freight, I would not be, it would not surprise me. I'm surprised it's not there. And even the color reminds me of a cheap ratchet clamp that I used to have from Harbor Freight that was like $2, and I think it was Pittsburgh, and it was black and orange just like this, but it never held pressure, and I threw it away. Even the branding reminds me of that. So if you are someone who buys your power tools from Harbor Freight, then I think, I'm saying this without using this, but based on the fit and finish and kind of what I know about tools in general, I think you'd be happy with a $100 track saw plus $108 for power. So let's call it $200. For $200, you can get the Powertec tracks and this, and you could have a track saw that is going to work for you. Now you're probably not going to love it. You might have to, mess with it a little bit. But if you're a homeowner or a weekend warrior on a budget, I think it's probably a good option. There's a lot of people who are happy. But if you're like me, I have this rule with Harbor Freight, and it's if the saw can cause serious injury to me, I'm not gonna buy it cheap. And so I'll buy things like screwdrivers or zip ties or gloves at Harbor Freight, but with the exception of this bandsaw back there, I will not buy cheap at Harbor Freight if it's got a motor and a saw that could seriously harm me or someone else. I would rather spend the money and feel a little bit more safe and confident using something tried and true like Makita. So my personal feelings on that are that, you know, and it's all subjective, but I'm curious if you have one of these saws, have you had the same plunge issue, or has it been great for you? And I'm also curious if you're watching and you're in that budget category, is this right up your alley? And are you interested in taking a shot on it? I'm also interested if any of you have that same rule that I have, which is if you can hurt yourself or kill yourself, don't go cheap. So last week I just released a dust cap cover for the Makita saw that fits in like that so that you can maximize your dust collection. And while I had this, and I planned on keeping it, I went ahead and developed ones for that. So if you own this wind track saw and you would like a cover to snap in here to maximize your dust collection in orange or black, there's a link to my Etsy store below. I've got a 20% off sale going now to the end of the year, and I'd love to put one of these in your shop. But if you want to see a proper versus video where I try again and maybe really run these two against each other, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. If you're interested in more of the accessories I use in my track saw, I'm gonna put a video right here for you to watch, check it out. I just know you might like this video if you liked this video. But if you don't want to click on the video, don't click on the video.